Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Ian, and today we're diving into a topic that's shaped global economies, including our own right here in Canada. The rise of the brain drain. Specifically, we'll look at causes and earlier patterns through the 1980s, 1990s, and then extend that into trends leading up to today and see how things have evolved. First off, what exactly is brain drain? It's the emigration of highly skilled professionals like doctors, engineers, and scientists from less developed countries to more advanced ones where they seek better opportunities. This became a noticeable global trend in the post-war era, picking up steam as barriers between East and West started to crumble. The end of the Cold War in the early 90s opened up borders and economies, making it easier for people to move, but also exposed deep inequalities that drove migration. Before that time, in the 1980s, we were already seeing hints of it, especially in tech and healthcare fields, as globalization began connecting markets more tightly. In many source nations, economic instability was a big driver for immigration. Think about Eastern Europe after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Hyperinflation, job losses, and crumbling infrastructure made it tough for professionals to even consider staying. Political unrest added fuel to the fire with uncertainty and sometimes outright persecution pushing people out. In places like India and China during the 80s and 90s, low wages and a lack of career advancement were huge issues. Talented engineers or researchers often found themselves stuck in underfunded labs or bureaucracies that stifled growth. And in many African countries, similar problems played out. Limited research funding, poor working conditions, and conflicts meant that doctors and scientists couldn't make the impact they trained for. These weren't just simple, minor inconveniences. They were systemic barriers that made staying feel like a dead end. On the flip side, the pull factor in destination countries were incredibly attractive. Developed nations offered better job prospects, much higher salaries, and lifestyles that matched the ambitions of these professionals. Take the United States as an example. The H-1B visa program, introduced in 1990, was a game changer. It specifically targeted tech and STEM talent, allowing companies to hire foreign specialists for up to 6 years, often leading to permanent residency. This policy helped fuel Silicon Valley's boom by drawing in coders and innovators from around the world. Canada wasn't far behind on that either. Our immigration system in the 1980s and 90s emphasized points-based selection for skilled workers, prioritizing education and experience to fill gaps in our own economy. Policies like these made North America a magnet, promising not just money, but also cutting-edge projects and stability. Now, all of this movement led to some profound demographic shifts. In origin countries, losing young, educated professionals often worsened aging populations and created skill shortages. For instance, in parts of Africa and Eastern Europe, healthcare systems suffered as doctors emigrated, leaving behind older workers and gaps in services that accelerated population decline in productive age groups. These economies struggled to innovate without the talent base, sometimes leading to slower growth. But it wasn't all negative. Many provided a financial lifeline to those back home, and some migrants returned with new skills, turning brain drain into a partial brain gain. For host nations like the US and Canada, though, it was a massive boost. And this brings us to the twist that's especially relevant here. Canada wasn't just a destination for brain drain, we're also experiencing our own outflow, particularly to the US. Canada's brain drain to the US really picked up steam in the 1990s, with annual immigration numbers climbing from around 22,000 to as high as 35,000 people heading south each year. These weren't average folks either. They were disproportionately young, well-educated, and high-earning professionals. About 49% of those leaving between 1994 and 1999 had university degrees, compared to just 12% of the general Canadian-born population. People earning over $150,000 a year were 7 times more likely to emigrate than the average taxpayer, and those in the $100,000 to $150,000 range were 5 times more likely as well. Sectors hit hardest included high-tech fields like computer science and engineering, healthcare such as doctors and nurses from hospitals, education like university professors, and finance or business services. By 2000, the number of Canadian labor force participants in the US had jumped 25% from 1990 levels, with even steeper increases for men at over 31%. So, what causes this for Canada? Well, a big part was the economic pull from the US. Again, higher salaries where Canadians could often earn 20 to 30% more, plus lower personal income taxes down south. The US was booming in the dot-com era with massive investments in research and development, nearly twice Canada's share of GDP from 1980 to 1995, creating a cutting-edge opportunity that our firms struggled to match. On the push side, Canada had its own challenges. The low value of Canadian dollar made US wages even more attractive in relative terms, and our higher taxes really just did not help. Government policies played a role in this too. In the mid-1990s, under Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, federal budget cuts to eliminate the deficit led to reduced funding for public sectors like universities and hospitals, squeezing jobs and research grants. This hit knowledge workers the hardest, pushing many to look elsewhere. Moving into the 2000s, the trend started to slow down, but it didn't stop entirely. Annual immigration to the US dropped from about 113,000 in 2000 to around 73,000 in 2006, showing some reversal as Canada's economy strengthened after the dot-com boom, and with initiatives like increased research funding to retrain talent. However, income gaps remained a key driver. Studies of those who graduated in the 2000s found that potential earning boosts of 20 to 40% in the US continued to lure skilled workers, especially in STEM fields. Sectors like tech and finance still saw outflows, though Canada began offsetting this more aggressively through more immigration, bringing in even larger numbers of international professionals to fill the voids that we were losing. By the 2010s, we saw a notable narrowing of the traditional brain drain for Canadian-born individuals. Data from the 2010s indicate a 30% drop in Canadian-born people obtaining US green cards compared to earlier decades. This shift was partly due to Canada's improving economic competitiveness, with tech hubs in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal attracting investment and creating more domestic opportunities. Policies like the Express Entry System, launched in 2015, further emphasized skilled immigration, helping to retain and attract talent. But a new dynamic emerged: secondary migration, where foreign-born immigrants who had settled in Canada, often highly skilled, began moving to the US as well. By the mid-2010s, these individuals made up over half of Canadians applying for US labor certifications, rising to 60% by 2024. This created a sort of brain circulation, where Canada served as a stepping stone, but it also meant we were losing some of the very talent we had recruited. Heading into the 2020s, the picture has become a bit more complex, with renewed concerns about a brain drain resurgence amid domestic challenges. Provinces like Ontario and British Columbia felt the hit hardest in sectors like healthcare, tech, and engineering. Key causes include the escalating cost of living and housing affordability crises, which has pushed educated professionals abroad for more stable finances. Limited career advancement in certain fields, difficulties with foreign credential recognition for immigrants, and perception of political or social instability have added to the push factors. On the pull side, the US continued offering higher salaries, better work-life balance in some cases, and access to advanced opportunities, especially in AI and biotech. Taxes and the weak Canadian dollar persist as issues, echoing earlier decades. The impacts have been felt in skill shortages, particularly in healthcare, where nurse and doctor outflows strained systems during the pandemic recovery, and in tech, where companies reported talent gaps affecting innovation. Demographically, this has contributed to aging workforces in some regions and slower economic growth in affected sectors. Canada has tried to address this by ramping up immigration targets, though their targets have been adjusted downwards in recent years. They've also started investing in research infrastructure to reverse this trend. For instance, increased budgets for universities and peer research in the mid-2020s aim to make Canada more attractive, turning potential drains into gains again. Overall, while the net flow has often favored Canada through massive skilled immigration inflows, the ongoing outflow highlights persistent economic disparities. Wrapping this all up, the brain drain from the 1980s through to 2025 highlights how interconnected our world has become after the Cold War. Push factors like instability and pull factors like smart policies created patterns that reshaped nations. For Canada, it was a double-edged sword, and this is common for a lot of countries. We lost talent due to economic disparities, policy shifts, and regional politics, but we've really adapted by attracting even more from elsewhere, influencing everything from our housing markets to economic policies. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.